Thank you. Good morning. Thank you guys for traveling all the way here in the really crazy weather. I know I'm at PNM, Public Service Company in New Mexico in Albuquerque. And I know all across the state, we really are seeing a lot of impacts from this storm. So appreciate everybody coming, but I know safety is of the utmost importance as you're driving later. I understand the storm will be continuing, so please make sure you're watching out for that. So my name is Laurie Williams. I'm at Public Service Company in New Mexico. My role there right now is Vice President of Integrated Planning, which sounds like I always say some kind of Dilbert speak. What does that even mean, right? So in my role, I am responsible for planning the grid for our system in New Mexico. And inside of that is planning what our resources will be, whether they're supply side or demand side resources, planning to meet our load in our forecasts for the next 10 and 20 years, planning the transmission system, where we're going to put lines, how we support the system, how we keep it reliable, and now responsibility for the entire distribution system planning as well, which is, if you guys have been following the news, know we are engaged in grid modernization. That is a filing we just got approval for to try to modernize our distribution system. Really exciting things happening at really every level of the utility. And all of it is around our goal to try to become carbon free by 2040. So I don't know that if everyone in the room knows, but there was a couple of years ago something called the Energy Transition Act passed in New Mexico. And that requires our utilities in New Mexico to become carbon free by 2045. So at PNM, we are attempting to try to get there 5 years early, which is easier said than done for any of you familiar with grid operations and reliability. That is going to be a tall order, but we are proud to say we are 65% carbon neutral already today. That is where we stand today. And by 2026, we'll be around 75% carbon free. So really a lot of work has gone in at the utility over the last several years. And I can tell you, we have put on more renewable resources in the last few years than generation we've built in the entire history of the company, which is 100 years prior. So significant amounts of collaboration have been required to make that happen. And so in my role, I think one of the things I want to highlight is we have a lot of open stakeholder processes. So anyone who is not familiar with utility planning, all of the major investor-owned utilities in the state are required to have open planning processes. So not today, but normally we have an open planning process. We have weekly, monthly meetings where we take folks through what we're up to. People bring questions, people bring suggestions to us. It's called our biweekly stakeholder meeting. So anyone that's participated in our integrated planning efforts in the past is invited to participate in that. Every 3 years, that process is sort of reset. So we go through a process every 3 years of making our plans collaboratively with anyone who wants to show up and help us do it. And that includes consumer groups, environmental advocacy groups, regulators, staffs, trade organizations, national labs. I really can't think of a group that we have not interacted with and collaborated with across the state. I've got a list of folks that we normally are working with, but I would like to invite everybody in this room. We have a website that is dedicated to this integrated planning effort. And again, fully public. We have out there every bit of material that we have shared with the public over the last several years. We have recordings of every meeting that we have held. All of this is publicly available. And the point of that is, I think, and somebody said it earlier, it is going to take every person in this room, every person involved in the energy industry, not just folks at utilities anymore. That's kind of the old way it happened. But to try to get that last, I'll call it the last mile, to get from 75% up to 100% carbon free is a very challenging task that's going to take experts in academia, experts at our national labs, experts from development companies, people who are putting their time and effort into emergent technology development, environmental advocates, environmental justice. This is not cheap, right? I know the fuel is free, but the amount of infrastructure that's required to incorporate renewables is significant. I give the example that for every megawatt of fossil fuel-based resource I shut down, I have to build 3 to 5 megawatts of new resource. So that means I have to build 3 to 5 megawatts of new infrastructure to carry that energy and or store that energy at different times on the grid. So it is causing every utility across the globe to think about their system differently and to have to construct quite a bit of infrastructure to carry that amount of new power and new resources going all over the place and coming from places that we have not traditionally gotten resources. So some of the ones I'll name: environmental advocacy groups. I think we've got the Four Corners Energy Alliance here. But one of the big ones we work with, and I talk to probably every week, is Western Resource Advocates. And what I would tell anyone trying to put together a group and find funding to be involved in this space is there are so many groups out there that are very well funded that as you are getting up to speed and as you are trying to find those entry points into this industry or into the area of passion that you want to follow and contribute to, there are so many out there. So Western Resource Advocates is one. We work very closely with the Coalition for Clean and Affordable Energy, Renewable Energy Industry Association of New Mexico, which is RIA New Mexico. All of these have websites and are very open to folks coming, learning, trying to participate with them. Consumer advocate organizations. We work with the Attorney General and now called the Department of Justice, but I think more people go, oh, Attorney General, I know what that is. But the DOJ is our consumer advocate, one of our consumer advocates in the state that's helping to make sure affordability is front and central. The Affordable Reliable Energy Alliance is another one that we're very active with. Sierra Club, the Interwest Alliance. Interwest Alliance represents generation developers all across the West. So folks who are trying to get and break into wind development, into solar development, into large battery energy storage development, et cetera. That is a great one. The New Mexico Solar Energy Association, and there are so many more. I think once you start interacting with some of these groups, and primarily for students who may not have a lot of exposure in the industry, I think these are all really great places to start. Agencies, we have a really, really good public regulation commission in place right now. Really active. They've spent a lot of time putting together public forums and workshops where you're hearing about grid modernization, or you're hearing about energy efficiency, or you're hearing about regional power markets, those kinds of things. They really are putting a lot of effort into trying to make sure we're educating one another, that they as the regulatory body in the state are aware of and part of all of that decision making. And that is all open meeting. Those meetings occur every 2 weeks on Thursdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Prevailing Time, and they're available on YouTube. So if you go to the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission website, click right on their page, they'll have it on their front page, open meetings every 2 weeks. Same thing with the Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department. I think you guys are going to hear from the Secretary Designate tomorrow, who is outstanding. I think if you have not seen her speak, she's going to blow your socks off. She is fantastic and brings just a wealth of information from her background in energy and really global and geopolitical implications for energy as well. So she's fantastic, and her department is very active in looking at, she'll talk to you guys about this tomorrow, but a quadrennial energy plan for the state of New Mexico that she would develop collaboratively with workshops all across the state. I saw Charlie Hanley here somewhere. We work significantly with Sandia National Labs and Los Alamos, but Sandia, We are right now, I can't name all of the projects that we are using Sandia for, but some of the big ones are, I think Charlie mentioned wildfire. That is an enormous kind of thing I've got to think about as trying to plan the resilience of the system, make sure that the system is prepared for extreme events. And again, whether those are physical, we've had a lot of attacks on the electric grid in the US, not PNM specifically, so no panic, but a lot of attacks on the electric grid recently. So really thinking through, and you may see if you drive by our West Mesa substation, we've had to put up a 14-foot ballistics proof wall around that sub, for example, because of those kinds of things that will protect it from both man-made and natural events. Machine learning. They have helped us, Sandia helped us with our emergent technology evaluation. So in our integrated resource plan for resources, we get a lot of technologies that are unproven bidding into our RFI because we go out, we look 20 years into the future to try to figure out what resources we should put on the grid and what mix. So Sandia has helped us evaluate all those with technology readiness scores. We're part of a Kirtland substation situational awareness sensor. So they're doing some security work and we're allowing them to use one of our substations to do that sensoring and evaluating traffic in and around I can't say too much. I'm getting down the road too far. In and around the base. Our downtown network. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the PNM downtown network, but we've had a real problem in letting customers host their own generation behind the meter. Our downtown network is really an unusual piece of our grid, and it's been really technologically challenging because of the age of that network and the design and the very little bit of load that it has on it. So it's hard to reliably host behind the meter solar there, but we know our customers want to do that. Sandia Labs is helping us with protection schemes and other things that will help us increase the amount of hosting capability we have there. We were part of and spoke at their power electronics conference. So Sandia put that on a couple of weeks ago. We sit on something called an external advisory board. So Sandia is actually soliciting us for the kinds of things in the energy space that we need those research projects for. And that has been very, very helpful to us and continues to bring us black start simulations, for example, for black start scenarios across the Southwest. For anyone who doesn't know what black start, that means when the grid goes down, you can't just turn it back on. You have to piece it back together, stabilize frequency, do all that kind of stuff. Not easy, but to simulate that and to make sure that we're prepared as a region for those kinds of events, they've helped. Operations, technology, cybersecurity, the list goes on and on. Our universities, for any students, we do have internships. Every year we hire 10 engineering interns in my groups. And 3 of those are specifically for indigenous students. So we collaborate with the tribes very heavily, trying to make sure that we are supporting students in those communities to make sure we are getting representation in our engineering areas that really represent the communities that we're serving. And remaining engineering students from all 3 of our universities, you'll find us at every career fair, probably right next to the Sandia Labs and Los Alamos desks. But love having those students because I think showing kids about the energy industry, especially at a time when it is just exploding with innovation and is so interesting. And there is a niche for everybody. It's a really nice opportunity to be able to offer. We support at New Mexico State something called the Electric Utility Management Program. So we basically endow that program. And it is a master's degree program for electrical engineering students, specifically targeted at power engineering. So from power electronics to all the way to the economics and those kinds of things that unfortunately are a part of so many of our engineering careers. We've got to know finance a lot more than we wish we had to. So, and lastly, I'll say a plug for the professional and trade organizations. One of the places that we do a lot of our research as an industry is through the Electric Power Research Institute. So there is an organization that's a really sophisticated R&D function that not every utility, but most utilities in the United States separately fund. So they do things from demonstrating advanced conductors. So we're right now looking at carbon core conductor, which is a low sag, high temperature conductor that we can use on transmission lines to help increase capacity without increasing size and sag, which is good for a lot of reasons. It's a lot lighter, fewer losses, those kinds of things. But we're engaged with those kinds of R&D organizations that are helping us to define those kinds of opportunities. And then lastly, things like IEEE, probably near and dear to a lot of people's hearts in this room, the National Association Transmission Forum we are part of, EEI, Edison Electric Institute, which is a policy organization. So as you guys can see, if you want to be part of the electric industry, there are a million entry points for that. And I feel like every kind of lens is available for folks depending on what your passion and your focus and where you want to make a contribution. So very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Laurie, for all those great insights and great information.